Anders, can you feel it?
Oh yes, I can.
This is Reconstructing the World, our beautiful YouTube channel. Now set in the Zen settings. A little annoying fucking up the Zen. Set in the Zen setting of a museum space.
This is my second home. I love this place. It's a Danish Architecture Center. It is really, I really love this place.
But today the episode is about the history of architecture.
Yeah.
So we go through thousands of years of, so this episode is 4 hours long, and then we go through 1,000 years of Danish architecture.
I didn't bring any food.
And we all will, during the program, through the program we will go see the reference that we talk about.
Yes.
To your wonderful building in Aarhus.
Yes.
3. Okay, so Anders,
so
let's start.
Yeah, let's start over here.
What is that?
It's a brick.
It's a brick.
And it's a very important brick. It's here for a reason, and mainly because it's one of the main components.
One of many bricks.
One of many bricks, but it's actually a really interesting one.
Okay.
Louis Kahn, a very, very famous architect.
Ooh, Louis Kahn.
Yeah, one of my favorite architects actually. He said that all bricks want to be something, and it's a very important quote, especially today. He was very focused. He worked in India and he worked in the US, and he was very good at actually working with the resources that was locally anchored. At that time they didn't talk about CO2 emissions, but the fact of building with the materials that was local was kind of an approach to his architecture. And today the brick is something that we actually know for the simplest building material to recycle.
Yeah.
And we've been recycling these bricks for 300-400 years. The monks did it, everyone did it, the peasants stole them from castles to build their own houses. So that's the most circular building material and oldest circular building material in the world.
But I know there's a but in there. I know you're gonna say, but we fucked it up.
We fucked it up.
Now we go to your wooden structure, your wooden building in Aarhus, here, and let's talk about, did the brick want to be that?
All right, let's do that.
I guess that
there's not that many bricks.
There's not that many bricks.
No.
So
there's actually no bricks.
So you asked the bricks, and they
sure
as hell didn't want to be your building.
They didn't want to be my building. They didn't even want to be anything close to it. And the reason for that is that the brick consumes so much CO2 in the manufacturing, and so the brick has become its own biggest enemy. So now the brick doesn't even want to be anything. And in the modern buildings, and that is a paradox.
Okay.
Because where does the energy come from? Yeah. And there is a project in here where we actually are trying to solve that. That's actually
don't tease for that.
That's a teaser for later.
That's a teaser for later.
Oh my God.
Maybe from a psychological perspective, I would not, as a storyteller, had put that guy in the building there. It has no reference to the brick story. I just wanted to put it out there. Yes, continue.
It's the best view. You can also turn it around to something positive. It's the best view actually from seeing all of Aarhus from up there.
Yeah. But let's conclude that bricks were not a part of your vision for this kind of future building. So it's meaning that you don't want to build high rises in brick anymore.
We don't want to build any buildings in brick unless they're recycled.
Okay.
And you can say, what is kind of the same tectonic or the same building technology, and you can see that the facade here it's kind of with the masonry where you put the bricks together and they lock in each other, and that's, you can say, the same pattern here. But the big change here is that it's a light material. So here we are using waste steel sheets of different kinds, but they're still overlapping and doing basically how the brick were put together to make a firm facade structure. But the very big difference here is that it's super light.
Yeah, and we covered the facade in another thing. But your thing is, you wanted to show with this building that we need to recycle everything. And so I guess from a brick perspective, and we'll come back to that, the brick can be used in recycled way in new ways, right?
In new ways.
Yeah. Okay, let's go back to the history of materials. So, Anders,
Yes.
we love Khan.
Yeah, we love Khan, but he's way earlier than this. This is the Khan.
This is the Vikings, I guess.
This is the Vikings. So he didn't he didn't do that much at that time.
But since we don't want to cover too much of the Viking area, it's just like, okay, so just to be Vikings, they're really good at using locally sourced material.
They were excellent in using timber structures and building buildings that would have durability for many years.
Yeah.
They were also very good at actually harvesting materials wherever they came. So this way of being mobile and then understanding the context and building with the materials you found, even building ships and vehicles. And there's an architecture to it. You can almost see the whole roof shape here.
Yeah.
It's formed like a ship.
Yeah.
So there's a clear connection between sorry about that. Frog toad.
Back to the Vikings. So we don't gonna spend too much time with the Vikings because they're super violent people. But they were good at building maybe they weren't that good at building actually sustainable because they cut all the trees down, but that's of course much later. But building in wood, building in locally sourced structures, building mobility.
And in earth and using ground and moving that around, making these symbolic structures, but also that they were to protect themselves against other violent Vikings, which were probably a very good idea.
Okay, and so now this period we're gonna go a little fast through this, right?
Yes, so kind of these are all the historical Danish buildings. So this is 1,000 years of Danish architecture and how it evolves. So from historical buildings, it starts here, 1530, moving up.
A lot of castles, I gotta say, a lot of castles, right, and churches.
And we were good at that.
Good
a lot of ornamentic forms, colors, a totally different way of working with architecture compared to what we do today, where it's going quite the opposite way, where we hit modernism here in the 20s.
Yeah.
And you see there's an invisible wall here.
Yeah. It's like, so you have all the ornamentals, you have all these where residential homes almost is built like castles or luxury kind of build. And then you hit the 20s and then you start putting up brick building, all the way up to the 50s, right?
That was a quick run through the architecture. I must say, 1,000 years. You just cut at least the first 500 years.
It's called television.
That's good. Then something happens here, which is probably what Denmark is mostly known for around the world, and also what has inspired us mostly, and that's modernism.
Yeah.
Then modernism hits us, and there is all our references as architects today are, as we said, Louis Kahn, Mies van der Rohe, a lot of architects, the Danish Arne Jacobsen, Utzon, and so on, and many others. That's architecture that starts to be a totally different approach. It's drained from ornamentic in many different ways compared to what we saw before.
Yeah.
But it starts to be different types of materials, different types of spaces that you're working with. And in many ways, it's also a period where society is growing.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we need a lot of housing, and urbanity starts to be a totally different discipline. And thereby changing architecture quite a lot.
So there's a need for people to move into new kind of spaces. There's a need for people to move out of poverty into the middle class, and therefore the architecture is adapting a quick, clean language to house all these people, right?
Exactly.
So it's an exchange of a need for housing. And architecture saying, okay, then we need to find an aesthetic language for that, right?
Yeah.
And
that's.
But are we still building in bricks, and are we still building in wood mainly?
It's both interesting and a little bit scary.
Yeah.
Because from the 20s and the way that we start to build with concrete, with bricks, is basically how we build today. So if you want to be a little bit, just a little bit, have a little bit of critique on how we haven't evolved and why you're saying that the building sector is one of the slowest innovators in the whole world of industries, then you can just look at how we built 100 years ago and how we're building today.
Because people need to know that when we see architecture like okay, we see this house, this beautiful, fantastic building that we are then taking out of the masses saying, look at this, or this iconic building here.
Yeah.
We need to understand that 80% of all buildings are built of somehow an element or a standard way of architecture, right?
Indeed.
Like it's copy paste.
There's a you can say that Rem Koolhaas, he did. Rem Koolhaas, he's a architect living. He's alive. He's one of the. He's not dead like these guys. No. But he has an office called OMA.
I'm not dead.
No, but these guys in here.
Yeah, okay,
not
thank you.
Hopefully not. That would be scary.
Super annoying.
And he did an exhibition at the Biennale in Venice, and it was called Elements. And basically, it was showing all the elements that a building consists of. So he was only showing windows, only ventilation, only staircases, only doors. And the interesting thing is that today we are not really designing these elements. We are selecting them from kind of a list of materials that we then put together. And at this time, the masters of architecture, they did draw everything. They were really in these detailing, and it was a period of going from the historical way of designing to a modernist way. But what happened in this period was that the designed handle on the door, the unique designs disappeared.
Yeah, like all the things Arne Jacobsen and all these guys.
All that stuff that we love and export and we are famous for, they all of a sudden started to be industrialized. And this industrialism started to kind of ruin our environment totally. Yeah. And in Denmark we said, all right, we want to do concrete elements.
Yes. The concrete period.
And we did that because we wanted to build quick. Yeah. We wanted to build international, high. It needed to look like something we saw in New York. And all of a sudden that had to be in Gladsaxe and be extremely big buildings.
But still, just to interrupt, it is my understanding that, and this is actually, we need to say that this is actually, on one side, all these buildings were built because we needed this social, we had a socialist party that said we need to have the means spread out so most people have a nice life.
Yes.
Right? Just to defend it a little bit, we needed to have a social movement quick, because we had generations of generations that had bad lives, bad health. That's why we did this. That's the good thing.
And the good thing is actually that the architecture in these buildings, the apartments, are quite fantastic.
Yeah, inside the apartment.
They're spatial. They have high quality. But something happened. Something went wrong.
Yeah. So and the thing that went wrong from again, I'm a layman, I'm not an architect, but seen from the outside, it very, very quickly turned into shit, right? The architecture was run down. It was, it became a symbol of poverty, actually, again.
It started out being very exclusive, and the people on waiting list that wanted to get these apartments were academics, and it was it was exclusive. You were hip. It was super cool if you were living in these apartments.
Okay, but I just wanted to we have hit the concrete period. Let's do a reference to your building. Let's go look at your building and seeing what is that you have done differently to try to evolve the architecture, right?
It's quite open, of course, in many ways. But where this differs from what we just saw. The modernism concrete elements, is that they were lifting elements, large size elements in, and using also the beams where we see the beams here that are the columns and beams that are actually wood. They would have been concrete. The slabs would have been concrete. In our building, we have to admit that the core is concrete as well.
Yeah.
We were actually allowed to do it in wood, but didn't do it because the walls would be 85 centimeters thick. But the difference here is, and where they are the same, is that here we also have light elements on the facades that are lifted in as prefabricated.
Yeah.
And prefabrication is a super interesting part of building buildings because they are always so unique. Like, it's kind of like building, one car at a time, or boat or whatever reference. In this case, they're always one-off, but the elements, they are not one-offs in the total sense of the process. It's a way of building in these wood elements. So as you see here, we've kind of this Tetris system is actually because one element, if you take this one, it's kind of a 4 meters by 4 meters element that are then put together all the way up.
Okay, so the elements of the facade is like 4 meters
approximately.
4 meters.
Yeah. But here the difference is that if you have a concrete element, a concrete element is both concrete, then it's insulation, and then in some cases it's also concrete on the backside or a lighter kind of cladding. But these are super heavy. And they're intensive on CO2 to create, both the mineral wool and the concrete. And then when you have a high building and you lift them up, every lift takes energy as well. So here it's also more efficient if you have a lighter facade. And in this case, we have a steel cladding that is recycled steel. Then we have a wood structure in the back. Then we have actually mineral wool as well because of fire. And then we have a gypsum cladding on the backside with wood as well.
A gypsy?
Gypsum.
Gypsum, okay.
Gypsum.
Not a gypsy.
Not a gypsy.
Thing. Let's go back to
but the interesting thing, just the last word on that.
Yeah, you can talk forever.
No, so
keep talking. You're the most sustainable architect in the world.
I'm just very passionate about it.
I'm fucking know you are.
Yeah,
sometimes you're a little too passionate. We can take that in a debrief.
Do you need a hug?
No, I actually did that. I needed a hug. Sorry. Is that also your?
No, that's a really nice project also.
Okay. Let's go back to talk about, because we're still very much in the concrete period.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But now we're moving from a long and just.
And I have a project that I want to show you.
Okay, great. What?
Because there's a project that I really love, and it's this one down here, where it's a
concrete building.
And
but I just wanted to do a segue on us because I know where you're going.
All right.
We have now moved. We are still in the concrete period.
Yes.
Every building now for housing still is mostly
also
concrete.
Today.
Also today. Yeah. So this is not us saying that things are moving away, right? We're still in the concrete period, but now we're entering a period with you and other architects saying, hey, we need to go back and work with, in your case, waste material or what is it called? Renovating, refitting the
transformation.
The
Yeah, so a very good example is that I would say 99 out of 100 buildings like this would be demolished, probably more, 999. And 9,999 building would be demolished and one would survive. And this is a silo. It's a project by Kobe. It's in Nordhavn. And the cool thing is that, that building and the client, Klaus Kasbjerg, I mean, he fell in love with that building. He loves that area. And when you have a client that's in love with something like that and say, okay, fuck it. We need to keep the building. It's a beautiful structure. We need to do housing in it. And it's absolutely not the easiest thing to do. So the question is like, how do you transform a structure like this to a housing project? And here, one thing is the architecture is inspiring and beautiful and modern, but it's also the fact that you choose to keep the CO2 and the concrete there. Yeah. So that's what we. So I mean, when we fucked up with all the concrete and CO2 emissions, a way of unfucking it up is absolutely keeping it, and transforming it.
Yeah. Could you actually take this building, saying, okay, I want to build affordable housing? Could you take that and convert it into affordable housing? That would be too expensive.
Because this one has taken so much effort also inside to convert it and so on. But what is interesting is here they start to cut out in concrete. Yeah. And cutting things out has been kind of a totally no-go.
Yeah.
But cutting out things is actually a way to go, because then you can cut out new material.
And that's a beautiful segue to your building. And this is Anders.
I'm learning this.
This is Anders' most sustainable architect in the world. This is your project. It's called the Resources Rows.
Resource Rows, yeah.
Yeah. And explain just quickly what you did.
So, if there's no buildings, and absolutely we should not build new buildings on new sites, but this is in Ørestaden, and this was a building plot we did. This is almost 8 years ago. We started this project, and the idea was that when you can't recycle bricks, which is a problem. We talked about Louis Kahn's bricks, and if you ask it once what it wants to be, and in this case, it couldn't move because it was glued together with concrete. Because from the 60s, middle of 60s, all the mortar is concrete.
But what you did was that you said, hey, can we take this building, cut them out into elements?
Yes. So the idea was, just on a conceptual level, is when we kind of move from countryside to the cities, and the cities are growing.
Yeah.
We are bringing cats, furnitures, carpets, our kids even, and wives, move them into our new place, but we leave the buildings.
Yeah.
So in Denmark, there's 40 to 50,000 empty buildings. In Detroit, there's 1 million empty buildings, something like that. And globally, you can just imagine. So what if you could cut down these buildings and move them into urbanity and build with them? And that was the idea here. So I think to remember it right, the brown pieces here is actually a brewing building from Carlsberg, cut out in pieces 1 by 1 square meter. There's a cutout from Aalborg and from Aarhus, so two different schools, and then they're put together.
Yeah. And you could actually, and that is what the episode we're teasing for here, we'll come back to that, but you're actually working on a plan to streamline the process of doing this on big scale, so that future element building could be put into this, and we'll come back to that.
Yes, we are building a robot.
Yeah, I'm just going to pick this one up. Yeah, because what we're also entering here is a period where you want to use lime tree. Is it called lime tree?
No.
No, it's called lime glue. Lime glue.
That's with the small green ones.
So it's like CLT.
Glue-lam.
Glue-lam.
So we are going to a period where wood needs to be industrialized, so it can actually have the same strength as concrete and other building elements, steel and so on.
Yeah.
And that's a transition. And we know it, even though we are quite old. All the sports facilities that you've been in, that's actually glue-lam.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but most of them.
But a lot of it.
So
we'll come back to that overview. So I'm going to go through the Pantheon. Werner Pantheon.
Camera guy. What is it called? Not cameraman.
I love that you call him camera guy. It's called a cinematographer.
Cinematographer.
Yeah.
That's why he's always so mad at me. Come on.
Okay. So Anders, in reference to your building, and this we've just talked about, is that you have this urge to rediscover the material. Yeah. You want to use waste, you want to use wood, you want to use clay, you want to use that. And I just really want to
I can't concentrate because TÜV, I'm really sorry. Cinematographer? Cinematographer. Yeah. For now, you're my cinematographer.
Dude, I just wanted to touch upon this, because this, from the, Utsen's building is from 60s?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say that we are right now coming out of a architectural period where this, normal buildings are being put up in concrete, housing just very quickly, cheap,
Yeah.
And on the other side, you have these sculptural icon building.
Yeah.
And this is very much, Utsen is very much the...
you can say, in this case, he was one of the masters of using these extraordinary forms and also inform them with functionality. So you can say they were shaped like that because of acoustics and so on. But from here and through the modernistic period until now, we have a lot of architects, and Frank O'Gary is an example of a guy who is using resources like an insane to create sculptures where actually the building inside, and I'm not arguing that they are not beautiful buildings, but you have a square building inside and then a form outside. And the resources used just to create a form, a sculpture, is something that we are moving away from, because we cannot, with our lack of resources, just build steel structures and complex shapes just to do it.
And just very quickly, we need to have a new language in architecture saying if you want these sculptural buildings, they need to be made organically correct. They need to be resource
circular
and all this, and they can still be beautiful.
Absolutely.
And just, we're not hating on Frank Gehry here, because what Frank Gehry did actually with the Guggenheimer at Bilbao, which is a building I'm thinking about, what he did with that building was that he created a masterpiece of a sculpture that then attracted tons of money to that area in tourism. So actually he lifted that whole area together with the municipality. I read a book. We want to move away from making new bricks. We want to reuse all the bricks in the world to make new buildings. And we also need wood to be built of. But just to conclude is, most wood cut down in the world is used for this kind of thing, cardboard, packaging, ass wiping, a lot of ass wiping going on with woods, right?
A lot of ass wiping.
Yeah. So my point is that...
And energy.
Yeah, and energy and biomass burning.
And here in Denmark, where we have district heating, it's incredible how many wood pellets that are imported to kind of keep that going. And that is the problem. We don't want... This is such a short span of life for this fantastic wood that is growing up. So we cut it down, and then within a month, it has released its CO2 and released its energy. But what we want to do is, when we use wood, we need to put it into buildings, because they stay there for at least 30, 50, 100 years. And the more durable and long life we create with architecture, the better we are at storing the CO2 instead of releasing it.
But Anders, today we went through it. We didn't even mention all the waste you use in the facade. In another episode you can see that. We didn't mention the innovation going into to the sunscreens from old windmills, because there's so many things to talk about, Anders.
But we went through 1,000 years of architecture, and you did that
tremendously well. I did it brilliantly. Yeah,
this is also your new favorite place.
You were actually quite impressed with my Frank Gehry fact.
I don't know where you get it from.
No, I get it from books.
You read the science?
No, I read the whole book.
You read the science.